Hey YouTube, Mike the Rinnai guy here. How we all doing today? Hope we all had a very safe and productive week. Alright, today I figured let's go one step further for what we did last week when we removed the water inlet filter valve. And also if you had to remove the water inlet assembly. So I figured let's go one step further and we'll go into removal of a water servo valve, which I showed last time last week on the video, is the water servo valve. Basically what this valve does, there's the water servo valve and then there's a bypass valve. There's two valves that mate to each other, and that actually goes onto this part because this is what is going into the bottom, and then there's this bypass valve that sits in the front. Basically what happens is water enters through the bottom of this water servo valve and turns a water turbine, almost like a little propeller. And the more and more water that is hot water that's being used in the house, is the faster and faster that this turbine spins, which engages the burner, which allows the burner to fire from its minimum to its maximum BTU. So what happens? Why does a water servo valve go bad? Well, basically, it could be age, it could be a defect, but it also could be debris that has gotten into it and has jammed it up, and you can't remove the water turbine to clean it. There's ways that you can clean it. We're going to get into that into another video. But there's ways that you could try to clean it, but sometimes you just can't and you have to replace it. Now, as far as with parts, most of the tankless heaters have different, they are different parts. So you need to have the model number. It's an R unit, an RL unit, an RU, an RUR. You need to have the model number, and it's always, always, always good to have the serial number of the unit. Now, if it's a unit that you installed, you happen to have that information in your record, but you can get it off of, a lot of the units have it on the front door. This one doesn't happen to have a door, but it'll be on the front door, but it'll always be on the left-hand side on the rating plate. So on all Rinnai units on the left-hand side, you'll see a white sticker, and on that sticker, there'll be a whole slew of things, but it'll have the model number and the serial number, and also the REU number, but you really need the model number, and that intel will tell you what the part is. Now, for those of you that don't know, inside the cover, now when you install the unit, you get an installation manual inside of a plastic bag, and it's got a lot of very good, important information in it. But inside of the front cover, so when you remove the front cover, in the bottom corner is a small plastic bag, and in that plastic bag is this piece of paper. This piece of paper, when you unfold it, it's not like a book, will give you the controller, your error codes, your wiring, will give you your troubleshooting, your dip switch settings, and then it will give you a blow-up, 4-part blow-up. So you have your exploded view cabinet, your exploded view internals, your exploded view internals, and your exploded view electrical, and then your parts list. So it'll tell you the part, what number it is on here, what it is, and it'll give you here if RL unit, R94, R75, and R50. And that is a very important piece of paper. If you can get a hold of them, I keep 4 of them in my bag at all times because sometimes they're missing. And this becomes very important. And it's folded up that small, and it's inside the front cover of the unit. Okay? So make sure you don't lose that, or you don't, have them. Have a couple of them for the different model numbers, because it'll always help if they're missing. All right, so you got a bad water servo valve. How do you know? Now, you know there's error codes. There's a code 11, ignition failure. There's a code 12, flame failure. But with a bad or not functioning water servo valve, the controller is going to show the 120 degrees. But when you go to pop the relief valve, open a tap, nothing happens. The thing doesn't click, you don't hear the fan, you don't hear the igniter, you hear nothing. So that pretty much indicates there's a water servo valve. Now, you call tech and they can walk you through the troubleshooting of the wires to try with your multimeter, but we're just going to focus right now on you have a bad water servo valve, this piece right here. All right, so the first thing you want to do on an external unit or an internal unit is you want to kill the power to it. So of course an internal unit, it has a plug, you're going to unplug it. The external unit may have a plug. If not, it's going to have some type of switch. Whether it's a knife switch, an on-off electrical switch, shut the switch off. Make sure, like if it's an external unit, go inside, see if the controller went off, and then test your power leads. Make sure that your power leads are dead. You do not want to start unplugging and plugging in the electronics with a live unit. Okay, power is dead. All right, first thing you want to do, now you would think you would want to start disconnecting the water, but you don't. You want to leave all the water and everything connected for this first step, because this step is pretty much going to be the hardest step out of the whole thing. Now, first we're going to disconnect the wires. All right, so we're going to find, well, let's zoom in here so you can see a little better. All right. First thing right here is you got this little white clip. You're going to take this clip off. It's going to expose this band of wires for a wire harness. All right, you have this blue wire right here, which is going to the bypass valve. You're going to disconnect this blue wire by pushing in the little tab and separating it. So that blue wire right there, you're separating. Now, that's going down to the bypass valve here. This is coming from the wire harness. The second thing you want is you want to trace this back, okay, to the water flow, the flow valve, the flow sensor, excuse me. You're going to find the little clip and you're going to unplug that. So it's kind of almost like a maroon color plug. Now there's two of them here, but this one here is going now to the back. But you're not going to disconnect this maroon one because it's tied to a brown one which goes to this big white one right here. This is the one that you want to disconnect, because now you've disconnected all the electric to the water servo valve. So you have this maroon wire coming out, you have this orange wire here, and then you have this other little maroon wire. So these three wires right here is what's coming out from the water servo valve and the flow. All right, now you want to disconnect. Let me grab a little pointer here. Make sure we can see good. Let me get these out of the way. All right, there's two little clips here. There's one right here, and there's one right here. That's coming from this part of the heat exchanger and this part of the heat exchanger. So there's three parts to the heat exchanger. You got the hot water here that comes out of the heat exchanger. Then you have these two parts, which basically is cold water and then the mix. So you need to take off these two. Now the reason that I said you do not want to disconnect the water yet, or the three screws, is these two pieces of the heat exchanger are gonna be a bugger to try to get out, especially on an old unit. They're pretty much seized in there with lime and calcium. So we're gonna use our tooth Weir screwdriver. Now, of course, I'm going to have to hold this prop. I'm going to take out that first screw. Now I'm going to show you the little magnetic tray we use. Once I pan back out, then you want to remove this clip. is a clip right here. And of course it got tied into the wires. Right there, that clip. There's two of them, identical. All right? Then we want to remove this screw. Now, most of the time, the screws will come out pretty easy. But there is times when I had to kind of drill them out, pull the clips off, pull off the heat exchanger, and actually pull out the screw from the thread. And here is the second clip. They're both identical. All right, now to remove these right here. I have not found a decent way to do it. Basically, you have to grab it and you have to kind of put your thumb up against this back heat exchanger, I mean the water servo valve, and pull them out. Then you just pull them out of the way. Again, put your thumb up against the water servo valve and wiggle it back and forth and it'll pop out. These happen to pop out easy. All right, now you have got the heat exchanger removed from the water servo valve and the bypass valve. All right, we'll get into removal of the O-rings in a minute. Now, you want to, of course, you have your water shut off. You're going to disconnect your union here. Let's pan this back just a little bit so we can see. All right, so we have the water shut off. We have the union disconnected. You don't have to take the union half off, because you're going to put it back on. All right, you want to remove the water inlet valve. So that's those two number 8 screws. Now, this, of course, is easy to remove because we removed them last week. And those are the two longer screws because they have to go through the actual casting of the water inlet valve. All right, so now you have your water inlet valve off. The union half is still on it. Of course, you have your O-ring. You could remove your O-ring and replace it. Now, the last screw, there's the last screw that's here, and let's take the camera off a minute and we'll show you the screws from underneath. Let me pan this back and we'll go underneath and I'll show you the screws. Let me grab my screwdriver. Sorry about that. All right, so that screw right there and that screw right there is what removed the water inlet. That screw right there, sorry, that screw right there, that's what's holding the water servo valve in. Now, of course, all three of them are holding it in, but that is the screw you're going to put in first when you put the new water servo valve back in, because that's going to pretty much almost center this in the hole, and then these are going to lock it back down real good. Okay? All right, let's get this back up here. Sorry about that. There we go, sorry. All right, now with this we're going to take our number 8, pan that back, there we go. We're going to take our number 8 socket and remove that last screw. Now, this is what I use to hold my screws, my plates, everything. Harbor Freight, I think it's like $3, magnetic. You can put it on the side of the unit. Of course, the unit would not be that tall. All right, now the water servo valve. The water servo valve, you're going to have to kind of manipulate it through the two heat exchanger pipes. Just watch it up bending these pipes too far. Okay, now you have another wire here to disconnect, and that's this white wire for the sensor. Now that, and I'll show you the screw, that actually is held in with a washer, a screw with a washer on it. Once you pull that out, you see there's the sensor. That you could leave. It's a ceramic sensor, and it goes through that hole right there with this screw right there. That screw. And you see it just goes right through. Now this here, this sensor you need to take off because you need to put it on to, so right there, you need to remove that sensor. And that also has a washer on it. Just bear in mind that the big screw with the washer is for the, and that's where that sensor goes right there. And that's the sensor. And it has that smaller burgundy color wire on it. All right, now you're going to remove the bypass valve, which is this part right here. All right, so let's pan this out a little bit more so we're not kind of hurting ourselves. And that is 2 screws. 1, 2. Yep, so most of the time they are pretty easy to get out. Now that piece of paper that's inside of the front cover will even tell you what number O-rings they are. So now you're going to separate that part from your water servo valve. So there is your water servo valve, and the back plastic that covers and protects the wires. That's what all these plastic are. Okay, so now you get your new water servo valve and you have your bypass valve. You see, this is where the heat exchanger went into, right here. See, so think of it this way. The water servo valve sits to the back. So this white motor is sitting to the back of the tankless. This bypass valve is sitting to the right towards the PC board. So when it goes back in together, this is how it's going to look. Now, of course, you're going to pull off your washers. You get washers with the new water servo valve. So you get a plastic bag of washers. But the washer is an M10B-2-14. That's the washers. That's how many I keep. And even though I get them, I still have this many extra. Because you never know what falls down into the grass, right? Okay, so now, new water servo valve. You do this all nice and nicely on your back of your truck or wherever you work on your units. We actually, when we do stuff like this, we take a table, a DeWalt folding table, and we bring it right to the tankless heater. All right, so you tighten up these 2 screws. Yes, I know I'm using a very long screwdriver. but I'm too lazy to go in there and get my other screwdriver. So you put this back together, give it a nice little snuggie. Okay, then you want to grab that screw with the washer on it, and you want to grab the sensor. So there's, all right, now you see there's a hole in it, and then there's a screw hole. So that's how it's mating. Even though it doesn't really matter, it has to mate like that because there has to be a way that it's got to get locked in there. Okay, you put your, let me get this thing started. Usually, like I said, I'm doing this on top of a table. Go. Okay, so that's going back in. All right, now you want to make sure that all of your wires are coming forward, because I'll tell you this, one of the first couple of times that I've done this, the wires got stuck back here, and I'm sitting there staring with a flashlight. Where the heck is this other wire? And it's camouflaged behind the water servo valve. All right, so we want to grab that screw with the large washer already built onto it, because that's going to hold in that sensor. And then you want to put the sensor in, and then put the screw on, and then tighten the puppy down. And that's what's actually just holding it in from falling out. All right, so now you're gonna, holding the wires, I like to hold the wires straight to me. You gotta manipulate this thing back into the back of this unit. Just delicately move these heat exchanger pieces. Now, you want to work backwards. You want to put this all back together before you start pushing the two heat exchanger pipes in. Because even that one screw is going to make it pop up and turn and twist and move and aggravate you. So put the 3 screws in. So you want your short screw and 2 long screws. So again, we have 2 long screws, and then I'm just going to show you in comparison, you have a short screw. That's the first screw you're going to put in, because that's the screw that's holding the water servo valve in through the bottom of the chassis. See, I lost it already. And this is what's going to happen, especially on your external units. You're not going to have this luxury of staring at it the way I'm staring at it. Okay. So you're going to get that screw in there. And once you get this in, you don't have to worry about holding it down anymore, because it's in there. So now that screw is in, but don't tighten it, you know, super tight yet, because you need to move this servo around. There is a little bit of movement in there to get these other screws in. Of course, you changed your washer, your O-ring. There's your first one. Now remember, again, you're working lower and you're working with the water pipes in your way. So it's not going to be this easy. Okay, there's the second one. Now you can tighten up all your screws. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now you're tight. Now you want to start putting the wires back. So you're going to find your large white plug. You're going to mate them together. There's usually red lines that are showing you which way they go in. So there's your first one. Then you have your blue. And then you have your burgundy. And remember, there's only one way to go, and there's only one way, only one wire each. Okay, then you're going to put on, get your little wire tie, get it back onto the wires, get them out of the way. Okay, let's just say they're on. All right, now you're, okay, you want to remove your old O-rings from the heat exchanger. You want to clean out the bypass valve. You want to take your Dremel with that wire wheel and clean there's a recess on the heat exchanger. When we get over to the heat exchanger, we're actually going to show you what they look like. So now, what you want to do, I like to start with the one closest to the heat exchanger first. You're going to push that in. Now, of course, we didn't change O-rings, we didn't change, so it's going to be a little bit of a dickens to get in there. But sometimes you have to give it a little tap to get in. Then you take your retaining clip, which this is your clip, and this part of it goes up, so it's facing this way, and it clicks into a recess in the water servo valve. And then these two screws line. So it's just one screw per side. Now this is what's a little tricky sometimes because of the, you know, debris and stuff that's in there, because you really don't want to go too crazy with any type of scratching it. So once you get that in there, into the little retainer side, you just want to take this and give it a couple of taps, and they'll line right up. And you take your first screw, put it through there, put it through there, and tighten that up. And I'll take the camera off in a minute, we'll show you. Okay, that's nice and tight. Then you get your second one in. Now, like again, just taps. I'm doing it a little bit harder because, like I said, we didn't do new O-rings, we didn't clean anything. We just basically, and then you get that in there like that. Can you see it? And you just hit this way so that it locks into place. And you get your screw. And you tighten that puppy right down. All right, let me take the camera off and we'll show you what we did. All right, so you see there's one of the retaining clips. It clips in the back. You see here it clips in the back, and then it's just that screw and that screw right there that hold it in, and that's it. All right, let's get this back up. All right, turn your water back on, check for leaks. You have your wires back in, you have everything snugged up. turn your power back on, and then go over, flush the system, turn on the faucet, and that's it. That's your changing of the water servo valve. Yeah, I mean, this stuff was a little bit rotted on there, you know, from being an old condemned unit. But again, I can't stress, it seemed easy, but it is a bit of a pain in the neck, especially when you have all your piping, your gas, your electric, your cold, your hot. Everything is sitting right here. This unit is normally lower, so I usually work off of a rolling stool. So, because the bottom of the unit is usually down here at this 2x4. I just make it taller for the prop. Okay, YouTube. Again, make sure you save these. Like if they're your customer, take them out of the package because you're the one that's going to go back and replace it. So for each one that you do, save one. Like I said, I have 4 of them in my bag there. I grabbed it out so I could show you. Make sure you know your model number and have your serial number, because that's important. And that'll give you the parts list. And that'll be able to give you the part. If you don't have this, somebody took it, all you need to do is call up Rinnai tech support, give them the model and serial number, tell them you need a water servo valve, and they'll give you the part number. And, you know, whether you can buy it from Rinnai or from a local distributor. All right? All right, YouTube. I hope this was helpful. I appreciate all of the comments and the emails about the past 2 videos. I'm glad the last week one was helpful. That is a big video, so it could be troublesome. All right. Alrighty. Again, thanks for all the subscribes, all the likes, all the comments, all the emails. You all be safe out there. You enjoy installing and using your Rinnai tankless heaters, and I will see you on the next video. Take care now. Bye-bye.